at the big desk here at the RSC, the National RSC, in fact, at Gallagher and Midrand. We continue with our analysis. We've been joined by a plethora of expert panelists throughout the day, and we're going to continue with that coverage as we await those numbers to obviously come in, and we're going to try and make sense of the facts and figures. Political analyst Prof Sethulego Matebesi is going to be joining us, as well as SABC News political editor Mngomezulu. Good evening to the both of you. Thanks for your time. It's been a long day and there's no stopping now. It seems like we're going to be burning the midnight oil at this point. We're looking at, some of the indications that results are slowly going to be trickling in. So let me start with you at this point. Your thoughts of the overview, an overview of the process to date. What are you observing? Perhaps hits and misses included. Yeah,
I mean, a very good evening to you and the viewers. Yeah, it's been quite a challenging election, this one, I guess, for the IEC. And I think there's a lot that it needs to learn. And I'm not sure the impact that the changes in the Electoral Act had really on some of what the IEC is going through now, because there does appear to be perhaps greater challenges than we are used to. But on the whole, the election is proceeding well. Yes, issues here and there that need to be attended to, and then of course those snaking queues, and also could be attributed to the fact that we have 3 ballots now. So there's quite a lot of factors that could have affected how this process went today. But on the whole, Lizelle, I think South Africans are able to express their democracy, their voice, expressing their fullness of democracy, which is something I think every one of us should be proud about.
And as we can see by the indication of the queues, people are wanting to make their mark, they're wanting to stay, they're wanting to, despite tomorrow being work in school. Prof, you have had a front row seat to this entire day, perhaps also this production at this hour. And thank you so much for hanging 10 and for being part of these pertinent discussions. Perhaps on the back of what Mzwai's just echoed now, you've seen some of the commotion, some of the incidences, but also some of the places and spaces where the IEC has really hit the mark. What have been your observations?
No, good evening, and good evening to the viewers. Yet once again, I strongly believe that these issues are long-standing issues. But I feel sorry for the IEC commissioners, because it's almost like you are entrusting. Because yesterday, if you look at the body language of the IEC officials, you can get a sense of frustration. And even when the media is posing questions, you get a sense that some of these things they are not aware of. And then there's a response. But it's very unfortunate, because once you have put your trust into some individuals, presiding officers and all that, and then at the end of the day they mess up, it's a huge problem for the IEC. But I do not believe some of the challenges that we've seen during special votes will affect the credibility of the election outcomes. But I will not be surprised that some parties, once the harsh reality of being involved in an election struck, then they will make a hullabaloo about small little things. But I don't think it's good for our country when, in the age of technology and many other positive factors, that we still encounter issues like an official of the IEC transporting ballot box, the late opening of voting stations. These have been long-standing issues that should have been resolved by now, 30 years into democracy.
Mzwai, she spoke about some of the lessons learned. Talk to us a little bit more about that, just from your observation.
No, I think one of the lessons learned is that, and another issue before, briefly, if I go into that, it's also about voter education, to be honest, and this is my own subjective observation. I haven't seen the same drive in terms of voter education with this particular round of elections, and perhaps this has now gone online, but the problem is that too many South Africans are battling with that, and that is a lesson that we need to learn. Yes, we need to move with times in terms of technology, that is one lesson, but you also have to face the reality on the ground. And too many South Africans have not yet, the digital know-how to be able to tap into that particular source of knowledge. So for me, that is one of the lessons. And I strongly believe also, and this is not something that has been publicly pronounced, is to what extent has these court cases that the IEC were involved perhaps disrupted their planning. I know the IEC planned long time ago, but there might have been just the unintended consequences of some of these court cases that the IEC was involved.
Perhaps also adding to the budget constraints of the IEC. I mean, all those factors have played a role, perhaps culminating to this watershed moment in our country. So we've been shining a spotlight in some of the key areas in the country. Also, some of the concerns or flagged, spots in terms of safety, security. And within the past hour or so, we've seen incidences at various voting stations as well, where there have been some commotion. What are you observing on that front?
Yeah, I think it had more to do with frustration of people waiting in the queues. They felt perhaps their time is not arriving. I mean, as late as I think around 10 o'clock, and I think even now there are still queues out there. There's a lot of frustration. If you've been standing there since 6 this evening, or even, I was seeing that some people had been there since midday, so clearly you will be frustrated, and I think that would be what will really perhaps play itself out in this regard. But for me, again, as Prof was also alluding, for me, it's a country that is determined to chart its own path the way it knows how. That is exactly what we're doing as South Africans. So we had a peaceful transition. Nobody believed that we were going to go through it the way we did, and we did. Now, 30 years later, we feel we need to do to show that we are a maturing democracy. Whatever decision that we will take as South Africans, it will have been expressed because we know what we want. So for me, that is really credit to South Africans. And
Mzwai, obviously looking at the positive stories coming through, I made my mark today. I didn't even apply for the special vote. It literally took me 5 minutes. I went in 11:46, I was out 11:51. So these are just some of the positive stories that from a personal standpoint, I'm sure there are many more that's traversing the country. But I wanted to look at the worry about misinformation and disinformation as well on social media. That's also part of the conversation that we've been having throughout the day. What have been your observations? Mzwai, let me continue with you, and then Prof, I'll bring you back into that. Any concerns?
Well, I don't think it's been on a large scale, especially today, because we were more on. Remember, we were at most places that were happening today.
Yes.
So we're able to witness it for ourselves. I don't think today there has been that much of confusion in terms of misinformation. But of course, with with this technology and social media, those things could easily spread out. But I think today I was satisfied that I think we're on course.
All right, and Prof, what about your thoughts on the matter?
Yeah, well, my concern already started in January when the former Secretary General of the African National Congress stated that it appears that in the past there has been vote rigging, things like that, very profound. But fortunately, South Africans are very resilient when it comes to this. And I think by then, many South Africans have, in any case, decided who they will already vote for. We're not a country where when a scandal happens on the eve of an election, you would want to suddenly punish political party X. That is not the situation in South Africa. And also, I strongly believe that your participatory governance structures are there to counter any misinformation in South Africa, and that has been the case also with this particular elections. And I concur with Dr. Mbejeli. I do not believe that this time around there has been any disinformation that could have had a huge impact on even some people deciding not to go and vote.
Well, we're obviously going to continue to monitor those developments. I hear we had some clapping just on the floor behind us, obviously trying to understand what's happening because it's live action, things are moving. That's why you want to come in there.
Yeah, no, I think there's a sense, I think the word is coming through that very soon the first result will be coming through.
Yes.
And it looks like it will be the Eastern Cape that will post first. So, and there's an air of expectation of what is going to happen. I think it will be very interesting because I know there's not much you can read in the first results because there's a lot more in terms of millions. It's just, but it starts to set the tone.
No, absolutely.
This is what, I mean, every vote counts. So that's why even if it's 2 votes, so they are counted.
No, absolutely. And thank you so much for verifying that as well, because I actually wanted to also shine a spotlight on the maturity of, the political parties, the leadership, as well as the independent candidates. Just from your observation, let's start from the onset, manifestos, campaigning, even casting their votes today. What have you observed? What are your comments about that? Mzwai, let's continue with you.
You know, what we tried to do, particularly as SABC, we tried really to reflect as broadly as possible from the political parties, the leaders, the independent candidates, and of course the most important people, the ordinary people. So because it is about them today. Yes, the political parties have applied for the jobs, and then we are employing them today. And you know, the vacancies, we have about 887 vacancies. That is both national and provincial legislatures, and all those people were applying for those jobs. And then as South Africans, we are sifting through we are taking or we are not taking. So for me, it was actually very interesting to see the optimism. But of course, I normally say when we start, everyone is excited. And then later on, the reality sinks. And that reality will start to sink now. And I can tell you, once we start to see those the results, because it's still early on, people will like, no, don't worry, it's still early on. Our people are still voting for us. But the fact of the matter is that the tone will be set. Sure. And then from there, we move on.
No, absolutely. Speaking about the tone that will be set, I mean, the fluctuations that are set to be coming in overnight, given, rural dynamics versus urban dynamics, all this is going to have to be monitored throughout the night. So it seems like we will be burning the midnight oils just after midnight. Prof, let me get your thoughts on the back of what Mzwai has also echoed. Speaking about the maturity of the leadership and political parties and independent candidates, given the shifting political landscape this time round.
Yeah, I think we are about to see the pricking of the barbed wires of any election, the challenges about contesting in the election. Very interesting. I mean, you mentioned we had for the very first time independent candidates, and even way before, I was on one show with Musi, my money, and I mentioned that, especially for this first round, it's going to be very difficult, even if you've got a financial Bheki. We've got Akhi in the Western Cape, Ahmed. The question is, if you are known in a region, will you muster enough support to be able to penetrate South Africans? And that is the problem. But even a couple of weeks ago, I mean last week already, you could see, 2 weeks ago, that some parties, it seems as if they are running, their tires are getting flat. And where the ANC campaign actually started off here. And for me, that has been the huge difference this time around in terms of new entrants. I mean, also, the whole hullabaloo about MK party has been a huge factor in this particular election campaign.
Absolutely. They've definitely been a game changer of sorts as new entrants, just given the dynamics unfolding. Mzwai and Prof, we keep looking behind us. All right, let's take a listen to that official announcement. Well, it seems like the IEC is about to make an official announcement regarding the first results. Let's take a listen in.
The leadership of the Electoral Commission is coming through to the podium. the commissioners of the Electoral Commission together with the Chief Electoral Officer as they approach the podium. We'll be announcing the results, the first results for the 2024 national and provincial elections. Ladies and gentlemen, on a very beautiful morning, after a long season of voting across the country, we are privileged as the Electoral Commission of South Africa to announce the very first set of results for the 2024 national and provincial elections. Let's see how we're doing. This is just the beginning. Many more results are coming.
Yeah, no, just talk. Oh, yeah, I get that. Good morning, South Africa.
Good morning, Chair.
Are you all well?
Yeah.
These seats used to be filled earlier on, but they are not at the moment. There are a few things would like to just talk through with you. If you don't mind, let's just put them straight a little bit so that we all appreciate them. At the 1900 hours briefing, the Chief Electoral Officer indicated that many voters were still casting their ballots. The pertinent question which he addressed then was what measures the Commission had taken to deal with that situation. He indicated that it is a known Commission position that where voters are in the queue at 9 when we close voting stations, that we wouldn't close and never take care of them. He also indicated that there was work we would be doing to move people to deal with those queues so that we could facilitate voting quickly. A lot has happened since he said that. And I don't want to bore you with the details, but I think, there is evidence right here before us which we can share. It's just not in a manner that we can put there. But what does that evidence say? It says, since we got the approximately 70,000 staff members that were going to come into stations for counting later, around 9, that we brought them early and we began to handle those queues. Since then, and I don't want to suggest there was a method. Anecdotally, every 30 or so minutes, we've been watching what was happening. And I'm glad to share with you that shortly after 9, to be exact, at 21:47, in other words, 21 hours, 47 minutes, we had 8,873 stations closed. In other words, whose business was completed. At 22 hours, 18 minutes, more or less 30 minutes later, that number had increased from 8,800 to 11,332. At 22 hours 46, that number had increased from 11,332 to 13,133. At 23 hours 20, that number had increased from 13,133 to 14,650. At 23 hours 52, that number had increased from 14,650 to 16,768. The number, as you can see, of stations that are now closing and processing results, in fact, counting and processing results, has been increasing at a phenomenal rate. The point we are making is there is no panic. There is no, the work is not happening haphazardly. The Commission is hard at work, as we have indicated we would do. And we want to thank you for your patience and understanding. We do not take it for granted. The second point I want to make is that the additional staff in areas where the stations have closed, they are in fact counting. We do not wait as a general rule for everything to be closed and then start everything counting. There are many stations that closed on time and started counting on time, as will now be evident. The third issue is the issue of slower queues and their causes. We have heard questions being asked, many of them very speculative, in fact, almost all of them. Very speculative. Is the turnout high? Was this a problem? Was that a problem? And I understand, we understand that, those are the kind of things when things are not so clear, we will ask questions about. But these issues we will now have the opportunity to look into, because we will have the results, and the results will give us an indication of some of the challenges that we may have faced in the day. The same thing is true for the fourth point we are raising here tonight, voter turnout. Many people said, tell us what that voter turnout is, and so on and so forth. We could have told you how many people more or less we have processed, but that is not the same as voter turnout. We are now going to talk about voter turnout. When the results come, each one of them will tell you what the voter turnout in those stations or in the affected station would have been. And right at the end, we would then be able to compute voter turnout overall. And that would help you deal with the issues that you were raising. It is at this point that we want to share good news with you and say, those of you that are faithful and are here this evening will now see the first result coming through. I want to emphasize that this is not a result that comes through because you've just been waiting here. I know those of you that are, on the side, on both my left and my right, you know the results process pretty well. You understand the results account, the result slip is finalized at the voting station. Party agents and observers sign. It is taken to a site where it will be received, recorded, the result slip scanned, results captured, audited, and if there are no exceptions at all, the results will directly come on screen. That on its own, it's a fair process that takes time. The fact that we come now and say the first results are ready to come through tells you that work has never stopped. It has always continued as we expected it to. And so, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience, for staying the course, the first results will be issued. And that result comes from the Eastern Cape. What did you say, sir? It isn't a choice. We simply say we want to make, we are going to be processing results very incrementally. I'm told it comes from Winnie Madikizela-Mandela Municipality at Mbizana Baptist Church. I repeat, Winnie Madikizela-Mandela Municipality at Bizana Baptist Church. I believe the guys are ready to let that result roll on. Thank you very much. This board is now going to get active, but please don't go home now and say the results have now all come through. It's the first. Thank you. Thank you very much.
There you've had it. The bells have rung. We're burning the midnight oil. Yeah, I feel the energy has shifted somewhat, Mzwai and Prof, on the back of that official announcement by the IEC. The first, results coming through from the Winnie Madikizela-Mandela Municipality, Bizana Baptist Church. This is in the Eastern Cape Province. What does this moment mean officially for the both of you as those results continue to trickle in? I'm just looking at that ballot board behind the national ballot box there. The ANC on 99. I can see the EFF 29, IP1, ATM1, IEC1, ACDP1, MK 17. This is all set to change. It's going to keep increasing. Let's make sense of what's just transpired.
Well, it's it's the start of the actual thing that we are here for. So the first signs that actually South Africans have voted, and then these are the numbers. This is the evidence.
Yeah.
But of course, it's very early days. At this stage, this is more symbolic.
Yeah.
But of course, knowing the governing party and its commanding stance, particularly in the province of Eastern Cape, it's possible this could be the trend. I'm not sure if this is what will be replicated countrywide. But if you look at 2019, they were at 57, which is not far from what you are seeing here.
Yes.
And at in the Eastern Cape, they were much higher than this. So, I mean, you can't obviously extrapolate anything concrete at this stage, but you do see that the ball has started rolling.
Well, the ball started rolling, Prof. I'm just getting, some of that figures relating to the Bizana Baptist Church in the Eastern Cape, in the Winnie Madikizela-Mandela Municipality. Total valid votes 163, spoiled ballots 2, total votes cast 165. Just some of the numbers, making sense of that, and also Mzwai alluding to the fact that it's symbolic. The ball's rolling, and we're here. Well, what does this moment mean for you?
Very significant, because look, the Eastern Cape is one of the strongholds of the African National Congress. So this gives us a glimpse of what can be expected in that province. It's the first early days, but also for me, it's very remarkable that this now, and I think it brings a huge relief on the shoulders of the IEC, that at least, and you've heard before they made the announcement. But what is very interesting here, you see in the new entrant, 17, way above the Democratic Alliance, which if I casted correctly, the MK there, but in second there for me the EFF. But that for me is perhaps indicative of what we are about to see in that particular province. But we're still far off. And one thing that this results tells me is that I don't think many of us have cast an eye how well the MK will do in that particular province. And still early days, but this is indicative of what we can expect. Look at that huge gap between the ANC and your second best performer.
Well, it is still early days, and we're playing with the imaginary crystal ball, right? As we obviously try to make sense of the trends through the data that is emerging. The processes that had been followed, the IEC also just giving us that briefing as we entered into the new day. It's officially day 2 now as voting gets counting and auditing and the processing gets underway. Challenges that had been faced, looking at voter turnout, that's also yet to be calculated. Talk to us about the expectations of this time around versus what's obviously happened back in 2019, even 2014.
Yeah, I think what will happen now is that we will start to see those numbers trickling in.
Yes.
And then I think by the time people go to bed, well, it's already in the morning.
I mean, that's all relative at this point.
So there'll be a lot more. And some people haven't slept because they were waiting for this moment.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of like reduces that pressure and that tension. And I think people will start now to ease up because it is the reality. It is happening. It's no longer a dream. It's no longer a wish. It is what we have put in. So this moment does happen. And I think by this time tomorrow, the picture would have really drawn up quite clearly which direction we are taking. Will not be conclusive as yet, but I think it would be quite more pointed in terms of where this election will go. Whether it will go to a party that will just win outright, or perhaps it will be a coalition. So I think by this time, so we should have formed a much bigger picture. And this is what has been happening in the past elections. So we've been able to see very early on how it will go. Because sometimes the gap will just indicate that this party will not need any assistance from anyone. So given that this is the most contested election and we have new entrants and the Prof has just spoken about the new entrants in the form of MK that is effectively number 3 in that VD, effectively number 3 behind the EFF, and it's in the Eastern Cape. And it's quite interesting. I know that many people have been speaking about the MK doing well in KwaZulu-Natal and perhaps in Gauteng and some parts of Mpumalanga. Not much has been said about the Eastern Cape. I know that obviously that part of Eastern Cape is the part that is not very far from KZN, but clearly the fact that it's in a province that has not been spoken about a lot, so does raise a bit of interest. But as we've been saying, it's really very early days, so we can't read much right now into what is happening. Of course, the trend is being set. A lot more is still to happen.
Yes, and many more sleepless nights. So I thank you so much for that. I actually wanted to just look at South Africa and the test for our democracy at large. Prof, let me bring you into the conversation. We've seen the legal battles, prior to this, perhaps anticipating what's also to come, given how, what's unfolded. I wonder also the increase in the political landscape, new players, new entrants, all influencing dynamics. Walk us through, how that's indicative of the maturation of a democracy 30 years in.
Yes, 3 hours after some voting stations closed, we already have the first result. And that for me is indicative of a maturing democracy, but also perhaps a demonstration that the IEC is capable of delivering on its mandate, constitutional mandate. But going forward, I strongly believe that it's very important if you look at what happened before, where our constitutions allow South Africans to launch and establish their own parties, but then to deliver on that, and it's exactly what happened. Besides all the challenges that happened prior to the elections, the question is, will the African, irrespective of the outcome, will they have learned a lesson that they can take forward for the next 5 years to try and work on the internal dynamics within the party? Because I strongly believe that this election represented a huge challenge for the party.
Just before we bring the IEC Commission into this conversation, thank you so much for joining us on the back of that announcement. I know that the bell had been rung. I just wanted to get your sense of, how citizens at this point also remain politically active beyond having now casted their ballot, holding whatever decision they've chosen or we've chosen as a country, holding power to account. What do you think needs to happen from here on to?
Yeah, South Africans should move away from this notion that politics is a dirty game and it is the responsibility of their leaders only to promote and advance democracy. I strongly believe that we need an active citizenry. And an active citizenry doesn't mean us only becoming alive and active 3 months before an election. First of all, in South Africa, we don't have any consultation with citizens immediately after the elections. You don't have parties that does that. And I strongly believe that South Africans should demand continued engagement from their leaders and actually hold them accountable where they feel that they are not delivering on their promises.
Well, Prof, thank you for those sentiments. I'm just going to bring the IEC chairperson into this conversation, Mr. Mosotho Moepi. Yeah, thank you for your time. Good morning, I dare say, at this point. Is it a good morning? What are your thoughts?
Good morning.
Thank you so much.
Morning,
on the back of that announcement, obviously, we've seen the first results trickling in. We're trying to make sense of the numbers now, the data emerging at this point. Let's get your reaction, your thoughts on the processes underway across the country this far. What have been your observations at this hour?
My observation has been that nothing unusual. People started speculating. The questions that we began to get were raising concern. People were saying, could it be that a few things that have gone wrong? But they weren't saying that, they were asking questions speculatively. It became necessary for us to say, from where we sit, we are managing an election. We know what is going on in that election. We accept that there are a number of stations at that point that were not going to close at 9.
Yeah.
We needed to get a message out to South Africa that we will not close those stations until everyone in the queues has been assisted.
Yes.
That's one. Two, it wasn't a problem for us. It wasn't a bad it's a good problem to have. We want those kind of problems, that when we have as many registered voters, that as many of them come to vote. That's what we are prepared for. And so we were going to. The third point, and I think this is the most important point, was the question about what then do we do?
Yes.
We said at that point there were almost 70,000 staff members that were going to join us at about 9 at night. We brought them forward. We started saying to them at 6:30, please make your way to the stations. We need help. There are long queues. We need to manage the queues. And the effect of those people coming in is evident from the information I showed you. At way after 9, in fact, just before 10, we only had over 8,800 stations that were closed. We now, 20 minutes, half an hour ago, we're sitting at almost 17,000, and I can tell you, it's most likely that the Northern Cape has completely finished. Everything is closed. The Western Cape is closer, and they are following. And that then sets us in the realm of of counting and results processing. I put it to you that we will now begin to see those results come through. By 8 in the morning, there will be quite a number of them that have come through. So this process may have seemed like it's slow, it's long. We are going to be doing what we are meant to do in a manner that's not unlike how we have done before. And I suspect that the numbers may in fact go up, but that's another discussion. I don't want to speculate. I'm simply saying it is well out there. When people come out in their numbers, our job is not to complain as we have not, as we have done. We haven't complained. We simply said, let's get resources, let's help them, and let's get the stations functioning as they should. And that pleases us to now say to you, we will close everything with everybody assisted.
Okay, so Mosisi, you are reassuring South Africa that all is under control and that the IEC has obviously got everything under its wing. We're obviously speaking about the additional deployment of staff, even the role of technology at this point, because I know as issues were coming up, you were in conversation with the media quite a lot throughout the day, still trickling and dealing with some of those issues. Talk to us about those processes behind the scenes throughout the day that you've mitigated against.
Well, I want to avoid speculation, but I want to let you give you the insight. We use VMDs to harvest data that is very useful without it being legislated. It helps us with harvesting data as to when people come, how long they take in the stations.
Sure.
But to the extent that that was impacting on the processing of people, we've had to make decisions as to whether we're going to be slow or we're going to process the voters. We didn't want people to go home without voting. So we said that is fine, remove it. And we began to deal with queues and get people processed quickly. We also then needed to deal with those queues that were long, snaking queues at night and get people help, which we then dealt with additional staff. We also, lastly, had to deal with a communication that no one should leave at 9 when we close because we will assist them. And we kept our word even there.
It's a new day. People have tuned in, perhaps, they've taken a nap, they want to see what's happening. I mean, for those who are not privy to the processes unfolding behind the scenes, as the ballot keeps increasing behind us here, talk to us about what's unfolding behind the scenes.
There are many things that happen behind the scenes. When you have persons that we assisted today, and I don't want to say there are many or there are less. The results will tell us that.
Absolutely.
But I'm saying that it looks like we do have even more people. But we also must say we have had a ballot at a national level that had 2 columns and long.
Yeah.
What the impact of that was to voting is speculative. But there are indications that it may, in fact, have slowed the voting process even further than we had anticipated. But those are the kind of things we are going to deal with as results come through and we evaluate overall how many people we have serviced, in what amount of time we have serviced them, and what complications or what were the levels of complications or ease with which the people have voted. And that we give you an undertaking. We will let you know. To speculate now, it's not a good thing for you, it's not a good thing for us. But you will have that information again.
Right, absolutely. The data is slowly trickling in and we'll make sense of those numbers and obviously put the patterns and trends as well. I wonder, issues of power, failures in some of the provinces, some of the cities as well. Well, talk to us about the concerns on that front, particularly when it got dark. The issue of safety and security also came to the fore.
You would realize I didn't deal with that. I dealt with what we have control over.
Okay.
So I make no excuses for it.
Okay.
I'm demonstrating to you that notwithstanding any difficulty, what is it that we as the Commission have had to deal with to get our work done? When we factor the issues you're raising, perhaps you're only talking about more efficiency that would have, been factored into the work that we were doing. But I'm not there yet, and I don't want to, overemphasize. I just want to tell you that we're hard at work. We have indicators of the things we need to manage, and we are hard managing them.
And more than capable, of course, as you execute your mandate.
That are more than capable. They've done these things over and over again. Of course, no one election is the same as the other, but they are managing this process, and we are satisfied that work is happening as it
Prof, you're sitting next to Mr. Mosotho. Perhaps you also want to weigh in on the sentiments that had been echoed on the back of the announcement of that first results trickling in from Bizana. What are your observations? We were also speaking about the maturation of our democracy 30 years in, and given the challenges that we have faced, but also the strides and the way the IEC has been performing, mitigating against some of those challenges, incorporating new elements, looking, traversing the country at large. What are you observing?
Yeah, I'm glad you're posing that question in the presence of the IEC here. Because a few minutes before I said we don't have an institution that has demonstrated over and over, despite the challenges that they face, that they can deliver on their constitutional mandate. There are concerns. There are glaring mistakes that has to do with human failures and all that. And I strongly believe that those are lessons that the IEC can take forward. You can address that. But overall, South Africans should never allow doomsayers to use a few incidents to try and question the credibility of the IEC. I strongly believe that the IEC is one, and several surveys have demonstrated the confidence that South Africans have in the IEC. I just don't know how do they navigate around these challenges, but each time they do deliver. But there are some challenges that I strongly believe that going forward they need to be addressed.
Around the 18th of April, I definitely was at a briefing or a talk of sorts where you were outlining, the readiness, the state of readiness of the IEC. We were looking at some of the pre-election disputes, the impact that has also had. We were also looking at just the complexity surrounding the regulations and really what's gone into this 2024 elections. We were unpacking, why this has also become landmark in a sense for this 30-year democratic dispensation. Perhaps you want to reiterate some of those sentiments, reassuring South Africans who have not tuned in.
Look, the Electoral Commission has had to deal with has had to deliver elections in the context of our country and where we are at the moment.
Yes.
Let me give you a simple example. If I'm not mistaken, and the Chief Electoral Officer has given those numbers to the nation, I think almost 80% of the people we have working for us are young people and unemployed. It tells you the amount of contribution we want to make to society at the same time that we balance our constitutional mandate. And the amount of care we have to put in both the work and the development of others. These are the realities we are never going to shy away from. We are dealing with them, and we'll never make them an excuse when we do the work that we do. We have a nation whose financial resources, we can't simply pretend there's enough for this when we compete with other things. And so there are many competing needs that we have to work through. But there's one thing we will tell: we are never going to compromise on the work that we are doing because we deal with those other things. That's the commitment we give to you as South Africans. And that's what this work that we are doing will reveal right at the end. I accept what the Prof has said, that today it's unlike in the past when you dealt with school principals and high-level teachers and things. We do need that level of people with managerial skill, but because of where we are, we also must think about people without that level of managerial skill and see how best we include them, or how they get to participate in this process. These are the things we'll unpack later. For now, we want to manage this process. South Africa is waiting for results.
Yes.
Once stations closed, people must go home, and hopefully by the time they get home, they get to know that the results have started coming in. They have a cup of coffee and sit down and watch television and see the screen begin to really become more and more interesting. And I can't wait for tomorrow morning, this morning, at about 7, 8, there will be a big change on that screen.
No, absolutely. I dare ask how many cups of coffee you've had and how many more you're yet to have as the day.
I no longer count them.
I actually don't even know how much longer I have with you, because I know you obviously you have a lot happening and everyone wants a piece of you. Perhaps you want to just give some final remarks in terms of the work that's unfolding, and then we'll catch up with you a little later on.
Well, it's too early to say too many things, but it's not too late to say to South Africa, thank you. Thank you for giving us this election. We ask you to entrust this work to us until the end. We will do it. We will do it well, and we will do it with you all in mind. We know you expect much from us, and we do want to give you that much. Just give us the time. We'll do it, and we'll do it well.
IEC Chairperson Mosotho Moebia just joining us here on the SABC on the back of the bells that have been rung. The first results have trickled in. I'm going to perhaps allow him to leave at this point. I know he's in high demand. Thank you very much for joining us at this hour and really just reassuring South Africa of the role the IEC has played and the work that we'll continue to do at this point. But Prof, I'm still with you. We're here for a few more minutes. So we'll continue perhaps looking at some of those numbers that are trickling in slowly but surely. So we've seen since the first announcement in the Eastern Cape, on the back of the Eastern Cape in Bazana Baptist Church, the ANC was on 55. Let me just see. It was on 99. Sorry, the EFF on 29. The IFP was on 1. The DA 5. The ATM 1, and so MK is 117. I'm seeing there's slowly some more updates. The ANC on 177, MK 27, etc. So we're saying it's marginal, but it's now symbolic. The moment has passed, and this is the reality now. South Africans have spoken.
Yeah, well, it gives you a sense, and you can also hear from the IEC sense of desperation that things should go well, but also very confident about the process. So I strongly believe what we need to take note of, as we have indicated, these are early days, but for that first VC to have declared that results is very significant for South Africa, as I've indicated, just after 3 hours of the official time that we know that voting stations should have been closed. And I think that is a resounding confidence in the ability of the IEC to deliver on their election mandate.
Prof Sethulego Matebesi, thank you for joining us here on the SABC. Thank you for your sentiments. Thank you for hanging 10. Thank you for being part of, the overnight analysis as well. It's just going to leave the conversation there for now on the back of the IEC chairperson also joining us. We are going to continue with more news and updates. It's not over just yet, so do stay tuned. We'll be right back.